Don't cross the streams.
Why?
It would be bad.
I'm fuzzy on the whole good-bad thing. What do you mean bad?
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's the topic that just kind of won't go away. It's a G5, Generation 5, 5G, however you want to say it. It felt like they were taking some of the pieces off and trying to add them into other collections to make them more value add, while they're trying to get rid of some of the work that they'd done. But now we have new information that the 5G Batman series from John Ridley, which appeared maybe was scrapped, is not scrapped. It's actually going to come out somewhat in the near future. And here to talk with me about that is my good friend, the Poobah of comics himself. Perch, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Good to talk to you tonight.
I'm glad that you could make it. I want to say this before we get into this. If you're enjoying the videos and the content on the channel, there's not a better time to subscribe to Thinking Critical than right here, right now. Definitely hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this video. A huge thumbs down if you don't. And either way, we want to hear from you in the comment section. We always love hearing from the viewers. Also, Perch does have his own YouTube channel. There will be a link in the video description, and you will have an opportunity to subscribe at the end of the video. All right, Perch, so this thing kind of won't go away, although maybe this isn't going to be the 5G Batman that we thought was going to be part of the big event that seems to have fizzled out. And like I said, they're kind of piecing it off into Flash Forward, Detective Comics 1027. But John Ridley's Batman, which features Luke Fox, the son of Lucius Fox, is going to happen on Black Label.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think piecing where this story is at exactly is kind of complicated because very, very early on, in fact, almost 2 years ago, Bleeding Cool first started running with the story that John Ridley was coming on. It was going to do something with Batman, meant to be a big deal, meant to be the writer for the ongoing series, kind of a really kind of promoting that this was happening. Now, at the time, parts of that story didn't make a lot of sense. Tom King was still on the book. The timing seemed off. And then James Tynion was coming on to the book. He's, of course, got a longer run. And beyond all that, the idea that John Ridley, who, of course, has a career, a very successful career outside of comics, the idea that he would be writing a monthly book seemed slightly off, just in terms of just common sense. Now, anything could happen, but it didn't quite make sense. But then kind of the rumor died off and went away for a little while. It resurfaced again as we were leading to 5G. We heard a lot about it at the very beginning of the year, that this was going to basically wipe out all the current heroes and introduce the next generation. And at least the pitch was that Luke Fox, Batwing, was going to take the cowl as Batman and would be basically the successor to Bruce Wayne, which an event that, again, at the time, didn't really tie into what Scott Snyder had set up around the comic. It didn't really seem to tie into what Tom King was going to do with Batman Catwoman. So it was unclear where all this was going to fit. 5G kind of fizzled out. And now here we are. Finally, we have this announcement again. And it looks kind of like with what's being announced, this was the plan maybe all along. And all the rest was some guessing and some projection. That's kind of the way I read it.
Well, it's interesting. Obviously, this kind of comes out of the Jim Lee interview with the Hollywood Reporter. It's a very small snippet. In fact, it's a paragraph with only one small quote from Jim Lee himself. And they're talking about, yes, there is going to be more Batman. John Ridley, the man who wrote 12 Years a Slave, will be writing it. And this is what Lee said about the series. It will have a huge impact on the rest of the line, meaning DC Comics. Now, does he mean the events within this Batman Black Label series with Luke Fox are going to affect all the other DC continuity series, or what they're doing with this series is going to be like a blueprint for the future of DC Comics, where they're going to start taking some of these characters, maybe switch them out, put them on Black Label, and do something new with them that's out of continuity?
It's hard to say. I mean, it could mean any of those things, but again, this is where we try and just guess a little bit. Like you said, his only quote on this was that it will have a huge impact on the rest of the line. Could mean a lot of different things. A lot of people took that quote and ran with it and kind of added a lot of things around the side. But really, if we look at it and you look at kind of every other announcement that's made, whenever an outside author comes in or somebody comes in, they're often hyped up as having a huge impact. When J.J. Abrams and Son came on the Spider-Man series, we were told this is going to have a huge impact on the line. It's clear at this point it won't, or it's not going to, it was an alternate universe title, so it's a bit of bait and switch. I don't think that's the case here. I don't think this is a completely kind of Black Label Elseworlds kind of story, but it is a miniseries. It is teased to have massive repercussions, but it is not. I would be absolutely shocked. In fact, I'll say right here, it's flat out impossible that this book is going to take Bruce Wayne out of the cowl, put Luke Fox into it, and have that character be the new ongoing Batman when at the same year when we're going to have a Batman movie come out that Warner Media is really hoping will be a kind of a new tentpole film for them. They're not going to mess around like that. It actually goes against everything that we've witnessed now for the last 2 weeks with Warner Media. So I'm thinking when they say rest of the line, I'm thinking it's that you're going to get a new higher profile for Luke Fox. You're going to get a new kind of hero that may join the Justice League, something like that. I mean, all these kinds of things. But the idea that Bruce Wayne is going to get replaced or go away, I think is flat impossible.
Interesting. Luke Fox, like you said, he was Batwing, I believe, in the New 52. And from what I've been told, I never read it myself, but people said, generally speaking, it was a good series, and they enjoyed that version of the character. Do you think this is going to be building off of what was kind of created there previously with Luke Fox, or is this going to be an all new take on the character, with the cowl on?
No, I think it will build on what happened before. I think that DC would like to get some new high profile characters. I think they look at things like Harley Quinn as a relatively ish newer character they put some spotlight on, and it's paid off very well for the media. I think Warner would really like some other bets like that. And I think also with everything that's going on, they're not going to allow DC to have 20, 30 kind of random new characters coming in. You saw Suicide Squad get canceled. There's zero doubt to me again that book will get relaunched, especially with a movie coming out. But I think it's highly likely that the characters in that relaunched comic book will align to the characters in the movie. So I think Warner Media is not going to let DC play with this stuff as much as they have in the past. But they will certainly allow a couple experiments. I think Luke Fox for DC is a very safe one. Like you said, it's an established character. The title did have pretty good buzz. I read the book. It was a fine book. Didn't blow anybody away, but it was solid. I think the character has some legacy. It's interesting. I think everything that Tynion has done with having Lucius Fox more aligned with Batman, I think is maybe all tied into all this and how we can make it work. So there's definitely some people out there I've seen who are carrying the torch about this is going to replace Bruce Wayne and this is a new era for Batman. It will be forever changed. But when have comics ever forever changed? I mean, for the last 30 years, we've heard that there will be huge impact, cataclysmic events. The world will be shaken to its core. I mean, that's how every Marvel event is built, for that matter. And it just doesn't ever stick. So I think we're looking at a higher profile for Luke Fox. I think we're looking at a new character somewhere along the way. But that's where I see this go. And Ridley is a good storyteller. So if he can grate something out of this character, more power to him.
Comic books definitely have a history of overselling and under-delivering, especially on these big, radical, long-term changes. They seem to just reboot themselves and kind of undo everything once it's run its course. Now, speaking of Ridley himself, like we just talked about last week, he is doing the other history of the DC universe with Camo Kamikoli on the art. Seems like a big high-vis project that DC is working on, going to be on Black Label. Obviously, this also appears like it's going to be on Black Label. It's going to be kind of its own corner of the universe. Certainly, they're putting a lot of emphasis on John Ridley. They've worked with him in the past, or at least Jim Lee has. He wrote an Authority an arc back in the day. He also wrote, I think, 2 different arcs of The American Way. So there's certainly a familiarity between the two and with DC properties. Do you see, is he in a long-term future for DC Comics? Is there going to be more of a focus on John Ridley himself?
I mean, if he has time, I think he has the interest. He is a comic fan. He's wanted to play in this space. So I think there is an opportunity to do more and to have kind of more with him in the DC universe. I think he has the interest. That said, I think he definitely has his other career, probably a more profitable career. I think Warner Media probably has a lot of desires to have him doing work in that other medium, not necessarily, paying him to write comics. But I mean, the other thing is, I remember from our previous video and some of the comments we got. I mean, Ridley, he's done 12 Years a Slave. I think that was a pretty solid piece of writing. Some of his follow-up work wasn't as strong, but this is a far cry from like J.J. Abrams' kid doing a Spider-Man book. I think that he has proven with the Authority and other books he can write a compelling story. Doesn't mean we're going to get it this time, but you know, it's not the weirdest thing in the world that he's coming in and doing this, and I'm curious to see how it turns out.
It's also not unexpected. We've been hearing his name kind of circling around DC Comics, these two projects specifically, for well over a year now. You know, his name has been kind of attached to these. Kind of felt like for a minute it might have fallen off. Obviously, he's still with the program, and he's going to be a part of DC Comics for at least for a little while.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it turns into an infrequent thing, sort of like how Joss Whedon's relationship was with Marvel for a period of time. I think it's quite likely that we'll see more out of him.
This also isn't the first time someone other than Bruce Wayne will take on the Batman cowl. There's been a history of other characters taking up the mantle, most notably Dick Grayson, you know, battle for the cowl. He also had a cool run with Grant Morrison, I believe, with Damian Wayne as Robin, that was really, really strong. I'm personally a fan of that kind of version of Bruce Wayne. I wouldn't mind seeing Dick Grayson as Bruce Wayne in a Black Label series sometime in the near future with Damian Wayne as his sidekick. This also won't be the first time a person of color has taken up the mantle. I believe when Stan Lee did his interpretation of DC characters, his Batman was black as well.
Yeah, it's happened before. It's not the, and I think they've done Azrael. They've done a couple different versions of this. You know, Bruce steps away from the cowl. With the events of Joker War, that may be how they, put some impetus behind this. Maybe it has something to do with how death metal is going to line up. I think all this stuff is, again, we've seen it before. And that's one of the reasons why I'm relatively confident in saying that, somebody will come in, they'll get to do a little bit of a story. Maybe he's going to be Batman, maybe he's not. But I mean, we've been down this road so many times before. I'm very safe saying by, the time the movie comes out with Robert Pattinson, we'll have Bruce Wayne back in the cowl again. I feel quite confident in saying that, and I think because history has shown us that.
Well, and this is the sales on James Tynion's Batman. There's no way they're going to go and start screwing with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tynion is doing a run right now that is it's in many ways made for movie. I mean, you could look at that and go, yeah, this a Joker War type film or animated show or whatever. Absolutely, they could do something like that, and I think they will.
We're kind of coming up on the end of the conversation here. Is there anything else that you knew about this or that you wanted to say before we kind of wrap this up?
No, just I'd urge people to just it's not necessarily give it a chance. Just there's some gut reactions I'm seeing to this of just like, oh, here we got they pay attention to the 12 years of a slave part of his resume and go, this is social engineering. And I think if you've looked at John Ridley's work in the past, both with The Authority and other stuff he's doing, he's not like Ta-Nehisi Coates. He's a very different kind of person in terms of the story he tells. He has shown that he can tell a story that is not completely centered on race. I don't think that we should just assume that's what we're getting here. Maybe it is, but walking into it just assuming it's going to be the worst thing in the world, I think it's too early to say. And if you're a big Bruce Wayne fan, look, I think we're still going to have Batman. We're still going to have Detective Comics. This is probably no comfort to anyone, but we're still going to have the Batman Catwoman series. So, it will be okay. It's not the end of the world for you.
All right, Perch, I want you to let's put your reputation out there. If somebody said you got to put $50, you got to make a bet, is this going to be a big hit? Is this going to be a mild hit? Is there little to no interest in a character that's not really tied to that Batman family? Obviously, he's related to it, but he's not a big character within the Batman family. Taking on Batman's cowl, do you think this is going to be a huge success?
I don't think it'll be a huge success. I think it will be, well, I mean, in many ways, I think we could look at it as similar to the Abrams Spider-Man book. I think the first issue they're definitely going to hype and promote, and it will be a major new status quo. If it lands kind of in February or March, right after Death Metal, there will probably be a lot of interest in this. And so I think you'll get a first issue that is really strong. I think you'll then see declines for the rest of the limited series. And I think when all is said and done, the people who will read it critically will say, I mean, it was a solid story and it was fine, but it will be very successful if at the end of that, Luke Fox kind of steps up and is a character that's bankable for DC. If DC can pull that off, then it will be a great story and they'll have won. But I don't see this being a huge, financial seller.
But if the end of the run, people want more Luke Fox and his profile is elevated and he translates to other mediums, then it's a job well done and it's a huge success.
Absolutely. I think if they can basically take Luke Fox where he is today and be able to make an ongoing title out of him or be able to do stuff in cartoons or movies or whatever, if they can elevate the character to that extent, it is an absolute home run, however the series ultimately turns out. And DC needs it. They need some new heroes, I think, like this. They've tried the new age of heroes and some of this other stuff. It's kind of fizzled out. So I'm hoping they'll do it. I say the same thing for Marvel, by the way. Every time you get one of these new characters rolling out, I hope for the best. And at least in this case, Luke Fox has a background and a pedigree, so maybe there's more chance of success with this one.
Absolutely. He obviously has a name that's associated with a pretty well-known character in the Batman universe. Perch, I do want to say thank you so much for joining me today. Very insightful as always. For the viewers, if you haven't subscribed to his channel, I think you're crazy, but you have an opportunity here in a few seconds to go and select on an icon. It'll say Comics by Perch. You go select that. You go to his channel. You can subscribe to his channel right there. And I highly recommend it. Great content.
Well, thank you very much. And always a pleasure being on the show, talking to you, and hope everybody enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.